We're going to start off this discussion of the adjective by simply reminding ourselves what it is that an adjective does. An adjective modifies a noun. That is, it changes a noun. In some ways, makes it more specific, expands upon our idea of what it is, or limits it, delimits it. So, for instance, we could talk about a dog, or we could further refine the description by saying the barking dog. And then we could even further delimit our description of the dog by the vicious black barking dog. You see, so each time we add an adjective, we narrow the range of possibilities. We change or modify what we mean by the noun. Now, also note in the last example, the vicious black barking dog, you can also stack adjectives. And so you don't just have to stay with one adjective. You can have a number of different adjectives. You can't have an unlimited number, probably because the mind cannot grasp or stack an unlimited number, but you can have, a few adjectives that all modify or change our idea of what the noun is. In English, the adjective usually goes before the noun. So the red truck, the white duck, the large box, and so you see this pattern, right? The adjective goes before the noun. There are a few adjectives that don't, and we'll talk about those in a couple slides, but the adjective goes before the noun. So just as the adjective goes before the noun, it comes after a linking verb. So the truck is red, the duck appears white. You have phrases like this, and there's a number of these phrases over here. The milk has turned sour. So the adjective comes after the noun, and in this case it's called the subject complement. So it comes after the linking verb. Anyway, so just remember this. In this form, the adjective usually does not come before the linking verb, except in unusual constructions. Red is the color of my true love's hair. Okay, so I just kind of made that up. I don't know. It comes from something, but you see, so in that case, for emphasis, I placed the adjective first, but you'll notice it sounds a little bit unusual and not idiomatic or colloquial in English. There are some post-noun usages of the adjective, and so we see over here the examples that I've listed, and these are just a few. Usually these are idiomatic phrases. These are kind of fossilized and built into the language. And so we have the person responsible. I'm looking for the person responsible for this. Now note immediately that this is different from the responsible person. So I'm looking for a responsible person is more of a general situation, whereas the person responsible becomes much more specific. And in this case, we're usually referring to somebody who's responsible for something bad that happened. And we also have other phrases as well, such as code red, grand theft auto, either the game or the name of the crime. And in this case, the auto would be the modifier. Okay. Nacho Supreme. What kind of nachos? They're supreme nachos, but we call them Nacho Supreme. The supreme would be the adjective. Notary public. What kind of notary? A public notary. Okay, but in this case we put the adjective last. Private first class. What kind of private? Well, it's a first class private, but in this case again the adjective form comes last. And Paradise Lost, the name of the great epic poem by John Milton. What kind of paradise? It's a lost paradise, but the adjective lost comes after the noun in this form. So these are unusual, and they are usually locked into the language in their set phrases, but just something to keep in mind. Sometimes we can have phrases or even clauses that modify a noun. Sometimes these are called adjectival phrases and clauses, though they have other forms, and we'll see. In the first one, the man in the green coat is a famous writer. In the green coat is an adjectival phrase. It's a prepositional phrase too. In the green coat. We should recognize the in as being a preposition, and it's functioning as an adjective. The whole phrase, the whole prepositional phrase, functioning as an adjective here. He grew up in a town where he was born. So the town is the noun that is being modified, and the clause where he was born. And again, we should note that that this is a clause. It's got a subject and a predicate, a subject and a verb. He is being the subject, the pronoun subject, and was born being the verb. And this again is an adjective clause modifying town. So sometimes phrases and clauses can function as adjectives in a sense, though we can also identify them as in this case, in the first case as a prepositional phrase, and in the second case as a relative clause. Okay, but sometimes their function, their alternate function is as an adjectival phrase or clause. There's a small group of adjectives that only work with linking verbs, and I have a few examples over here. The monster is alive. You see, so I can say the monster is alive, but I can't really say I saw the alive monster, right? Okay, it just doesn't work. So this is the kind of adjective that only works with linking verbs. The princess is asleep. Okay, I can say that, you see. So we have a linking verb is, in both cases, the linking verb to be. But I can't say the prince kissed the asleep princess. That doesn't work. So something like alive or a word like asleep only works with the linking verb as the complement of the subject. And other adjectives like this are afraid, alone, aware. So he was afraid versus I saw the afraid boy. You can't really say the afraid boy. Okay, so anyway, so just remember some adjectives only work with linking verbs. Nouns can function as adjectives as well. So you can have a noun that modifies another noun. So the first noun is being used as an adjective. And examples of these are listed over here. You could say a foot race, a company store, a spaceship, a car salesman, dog food, production cost, a coffee cup. So in each one of these cases, the first word, foot, company, space, car, dog, production, and coffee, are nouns in their own right. But here they're being used as adjectives. So it'd be possible to say, I hurt my foot in the foot race. See, so the first foot is functioning as a noun. The second foot is functioning as an adjective that modifies race, that changes the race or limits the type of race, further defines what type of race was it. Was it a boat race? Was it a car race? Was it a bicycle race? And each one of those being nouns, by the way. No, it was a foot race. Okay, so anyway, just remember, nouns can sometimes work as adjectives. Verbs can sometimes serve as adjectives as well. And so you'll see the list down here. Okay, it's I'm kind of squeezed into the top part of the frame here because I needed room to build the chart. But anyway, so you see from the verb bore, as in he is boring me. Okay, he's not speaking of anything of interest to me, which might be the case with this grammar lecture, but I hope not. But you can see that he is a boring speaker. Okay, boring right there is from the verb form and the adding with the ing means something different from he is a bored listener. Bored, as in he is being bored. Okay, so you have a difference in meaning between boring and bored. In the same way, these are confusing instructions or confused students. So you see, I think that we can construct a kind of rule here. If you use the ing form, that means that the noun that follows is performing the action, conforming the action of boring or confusing. Whereas if you have the ed form, you can think of that as being kind of in the passive voice, then the noun, as in the listener or the students, is in essence the object of the action, is receiving the action. So the students are confused by the confusing instructions. Okay. So, and again, you have the depressing situation or a depressed patient. So the psychologist heard about the depressing situation from the patient who is depressed, from the depressed patient. That is a frightening lion, or the frightened hikers, were confronted by the frightening lion. Okay. We had a disappointing result versus a disappointed lover, somebody who has been disappointed in love. Okay. So I heard your pleasing words. I am now a pleased parent. My child has done so well in school, and you're very kind to send me your pleasing words. Your words pleased me. Okay, so a difference between pleasing and pleased. And again, I heard the shocking news, or I read the shocking news in the newspaper. If anybody knows what a newspaper is these days, okay, maybe not. Okay, but I was a shocked reader. I was shocked to read that. Okay, so anyway, you can use verbs as adjectives, but they mean something different depending on whether you put them in the ing form or in the past participle form with the ed. Adjectives can also be used to compare. And how we divide these up is we either have two things that we're comparing, or we're comparing three or more things. And so we use slightly different forms depending. So I could say, for instance, Lord of the Rings is a better movie than Titanic. Now, please don't get mad. Please don't get mad if you don't agree with that. I'm just using this as an example. Okay, so and then you have the superlative, which compares three or more things, and we could say something like, some people say Muhammad Ali was the best boxer in the history of the sport. So best. So you notice we don't say he was the better boxer in the history of the sport, because there are many different boxers. Remember, three or more. He's the best boxer. And in the next couple slides, we'll break down the usage of the comparative and the superlative a little bit further. The comparative looks at two items, puts two items up against each other and compares them. Okay, and this form generally adds an er. So of the two brothers, he is taller. She is smarter than her father. Johnny is faster than Tommy. Okay, so we have the er form here. And remember, this is when we look at two items and compare and or contrast them. What we call the superlative looks at three or more items. And this form takes the est ending. So of the seven brothers, he is the nicest. Of all the stars, Cyrus appears the brightest in the night sky. She is the best player on the squad. We call him Speedy because he's the fastest runner in the class. Okay, so it takes these forms take the est ending. Okay, so we make a distinction between comparing two items, which is the comparative, and three or more, which is the superlative. There are some irregular forms in the comparative, and we have to just memorize these. And they are words like good and bad, less and much, and so I'll go through these. And so I'm bad, you are worse, but he is the worst of all. Okay, so notice the difference there. I'm well, thank you very much. Tomorrow I hope to be better, and next week I hope to be best of all. Okay, so you see, so good, better, best. Okay, or well, better, best. Okay. Less, I earned less than he did. Of the two of us, you earned the lesser amount, and she earned the least of all. Okay, so there you see some examples how those are used. Okay, and much, more, and most. Okay, I had much happiness at that time. I could have had more happiness if things had been different, but the most happiness I have ever had in my life has been when I met you. Okay? There you go. Okay. So you see, these are the irregularities in the comparative and superlative forms. Okay? So, and again, in the text, you will see more of these spelled out and more examples given. One thing to note is that the ER and EST ending are only used with single syllable adjectives. And so I cannot say he is intelligenter than his brother. I can say he is smarter than his brother, but I cannot say he is intelligenter than his brother. That doesn't work, I'm afraid. And so what we use with multiple syllable adjectives is a word such as more or less. He is less intelligent than his brother. He is more intelligent than his brother. You see, so, and another example, just one more example, capable, the word capable. He is the most capable employee I have ever had. Or he is more capable than most of my employees. Okay, more capable. So I'm comparing him against somebody else. Okay, he's more, Fred Jones is more capable than Ivan Smith. Okay, so he's more capable. That's two. That's the comparative. Or the superlative, he is the most capable employee I have ever had. So, so remember, when you have a adjective that has more than 3 syllables, you do not use the EST or the ER form. You use the modifying comparatives, such as more or most, less or least.